Chapter 11. There's a ghost in the washroom. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 11. There's a ghost in the washroom. The two girls were a bit reluctant when Wu Wenyun had just finished her order. Still, just as she had instructed, they prodded Qi Shuyan forward, but they found this time that no matter how much they pushed, she didn't budge. The yellowish light in the washroom suddenly exploded and instantly plunged them into darkness. With the dim sky outside, the faint white light shining through the dirty, blurred glass made the toilet look even more eerie, scaring all the girls. Several cowardly girls squealed. Screaming ghosts, it's dark, hurry up. I'm in a hurry to get home for dinner. Wu Wenyun turned on the flashlight in her phone and urged anxiously. After Wu Wenyun turned on the flashlight, the other girls reacted and turned on their mobile flashlights too. The toilet was brightly lit and the thin cold light drove away the terrible darkness. They just couldn't tell if it was just their illusion, but they all felt like a gust of chilly wind had blown in, blowing their necks a bit cold. Why is this washroom spooky? One girl exclaimed, we'd better hurry home. Tisk, coward. Zhang Yuhui scoffed, with so many of us, what's there to be scared of? Could it be that you think this washroom is haunted? Fancy that you're still going to school, even I know there are no ghosts in this world. How could there be no ghosts? One girl died here alone. A cold female voice came with the sound of the dripping toilet muffling it like a veil. Zhang Yuhui and the rest looked over only to find that it was Qi Shuyan, who hadn't spoken or resisted. Most of Qi Shuyan's face was sunk in gloom, with her expression unreadable and her head hanging down a bit. Her whole being was like a drop of ink completely plunged into darkness. Seeing her appearance, the group of girls were so scared that their faces changed drastically. They took several steps back in horror and slightly palpitated. Looking at Qi Shuyan's appearance at this moment inexplicably reminded them of scenes in ghost movies. Qi Shuyan, do you think you'll get away pretending to be a ghost? Wu Wenyun frowned at the girls who had retreated several steps, held up her phone and directed the light straight at Qi Shuyan. With one hand, she grabbed Qi Shuyan's collar and berated, lift your head up, are you trying to play ghost? I'm going to beat you into a ghost this time. Guys, come and help. Wu Wenyun winked and gestured for the girls standing aside to come over and assist, but seeing their resistance, she could only yell, Lin Chenchen, Xiao Lerong, you two want revenge, don't you? Hearing Wu Wenyun's words, Lin Chenchen and Xiao Lerong could only walk over and grab Qi Shuyan's arm respectively. You're not lifting your head. Didn't I tell you to lift your head up? Wu Wenyun raised the palm of her hand and struck. Snap. A girl screamed miserably. Wu Wenyun, are you crazy, why are you hitting me? Lin Chenchen screamed and cursed on the side. Wu Wenyun froze for a moment. She had clearly struck Qi Shuyan, but the red and swollen fingerprints on Lin Chenchen's cheeks, which still bore nail marks, were very distinct. She didn't believe in evil, and when she spotted Qi Shuyan, she gnashed her teeth stubbornly and raised another slap. Snap. This time it was Xiao Lerong. Are you trying to hit her or us? Xiao Lerong was furious. She covered her red and swollen cheek and stared daggers at Wu Wenyun. But I clearly saw Wenyun hitting her. A girl blurted out and Xiao Lerong, whose eyes were blazing in anger, was instantly stupefied. Even Lin Chenchen felt inexplicably cold in the heart, while the group of girls fell silent. Better leave now or it will be too late. Qi Shuyan raised her head, and the dull light and shadow on her face inexplicably looked a bit ominous and eerie. I suddenly remembered that there was something else going on at home, and I'll leave you to it. One of the more timid girls scrambled desperately outside. My dad just called looking for me. I'm leaving first too, Xiao Min, wait for me. Another girl also hurried outside. Xiao Min, Zheng Yuro, you two are extremely disloyal. If you dare to leave now, I won't take you both next time. Zhang Yuhui warned angrily, but her threat didn't deter the frightened Xiao Min and Xing Yulo in the slightest, but it did subdue the few restless girls. Sister Hui, leave the two of them alone. Lend me a pocket knife first and I'll quickly finish her off. Wu Wenyun grinned grimly at Qi Shuyan and said, You're good, I thought you were a steamed stuffed bun, but didn't expect you still have a bit of skill in bluffing. Since you're so conceited, then I'll give you a few more cuts in your face. Draw a little turtle. Xiao Lurong grinned nearby. Haha, this is fun, draw another bird. Lin Chen Chen laughed and came out with another idea. Alright, I'll draw you a turtle first. Wu Wenyun joined in the laughter. Just as her blade was about to reach Qi Shuyan's cheek, the light suddenly went out. Strange, why is my phone dead? Yeah, my phone won't turn on either. Have you guys ever felt the chill? A girl wrapped her arms around herself. Feeling someone tugging at her clothes, she snapped with some impatience, Stop tugging my clothes. She long pressed the power button and her phone's screen suddenly emitted a bright light. She rejoiced, Yay, my phone is on. Feeling that someone was still pulling her clothes, and it was slimy and greasy, just like a sweaty hand, she directly turned around with her phone in hand this time and lashed out. You're mad, why are you always pulling my... Before she could even utter the word clothes out, she looked down and saw a prostrate person raising a hideous grimace. Then she let out a blood-curdling screech, Ghost, ghost. Her phone clattered and landed on the floor, and the faint glow gave the others a rough glimpse of the silhouette in the washroom. All the girls now had a full view of a girl crawling on the ground. The girl, dressed in a white dress, with long hair, was dripping as if she was soaked in water. Dripping constantly. Both her legs were crawling forward with a limp as if they had been broken. Above all, lifting that half-rotten face with a grin was monstrously eerie. She suddenly twisted her head in a crazy arc and shook her head in Qi Shuyan's direction, then her eyes bubbled with greed. That girl smelled so good, savory, so nice to gnaw on. Just when she wanted to pounce on her, the girl's shadow in front of her suddenly disappeared. When Qi Shuyan saw the ghost twist her head and smile strangely at her, she took out an invisibility charm and stuck it on her body without changing her face. Sure enough, as soon as the invisibility charm was stuck, the female ghost looked around and couldn't see the savory girl she was drooling over. She could only turn her head towards another bunch of wailing girls. Probably having lost a tasty treat, she rose very quickly this time. Her body wobbled as if it would crack into pieces and moved rapidly with warped limbs. Lin Chinchen, Zhang Yuhui and others had long gone white in fright at the sight of the female ghost. They scurried to the exit of the washroom ashen-faced, but to their horror, they crashed into a wall when they obviously reached the exit at last. They immediately realized that it was a ghost-built wall. Now, they really wanted to cry endless tears. Chapter 12. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xiao Min and Zheng Yuro were walking on the way home. Did you feel something just now? Xing Yuro asked. Yeah, the beads on my wrist were burning hot just a moment ago. Xiao Min handed the jade bracelet she was wearing to Xing Yuro to see. My grandma asked this from a great master for me. So there really are ghosts? Xing Yuro asked with a shudder. I don't know, maybe not. Said Xiao Min faint-heartedly, but her uncertain tone made Xing Yuro all the more scared. At the chime of a bell in the silence, the two screamed and hugged each other. Passers-by, who caught sight of their behavior, gave them strange looks. They were obviously deranged. That sounded like a mobile ringtone, it's yours. Xing Yuro sighed a breath of relief knowing she had scared herself and motioned Xiao Min. You're right, it's Feng Yanli's. Xiao Min took a look at the screen display, her forehead puckered, and she answered the phone. Are you still roughing up that Qi Shuyan? Send me a video of her beating. Feng Yanli greeted cheerfully on the other end. After learning that Xiao Min had deserted the field, Feng Yanli's tone immediately turned sour and she reprimanded fiercely, "How dare you be so chicken-hearted, what scared you off from beating up that fool, Qi Shuyan? Don't expect me to give you a penny when the time comes." She hung up after speaking. Who does she think she is? She just has some dirty money. Big deal. Xiao Min was also a little upset that she had been hung up on. Besides, I've helped before, so why not pay me? Lin Chenchen and Wu Wenyun won't go overboard, right? Zheng Yuro had just recently joined their small group, thinking that they were simply cool, but she was still somewhat soft-hearted when she saw so many people ganging up on Qi Shuyan alone moments ago. It's fine, as long as it doesn't cost anyone's life. Besides, Wu Wenyun's family is rich and she has an uncle who is our school's director. She can settle everything. Xiao Min wasn't the least bit worried since this wasn't the first time something of the like happened. However, when they returned to school the next day, they didn't expect that Qi Shuyan had escaped unscathed, but Wu Wenyun's group didn't. Wu Wenyun and Zhang Yuhui were in the most serious condition, both of whom had been hospitalized and were still unconscious, while the rest of the group of girls were okay and had just suffered some scares. The police came for questioning and all said they had seen a female ghost in a white dress, so they had no other choice but to leave. The discussion among the seniors of the first class was in full swing. Did you guys not see that Lin Chenchen and Xiao Lerong were all chalk-white? Did they really run into a ghost? It can't be, did someone play a trick? You said it. Qi Shuyan seemed a bit different lately. She was taken to the police station for interrogation. Could this have anything to do with her? That's impossible. Wu Wenyun brought a bunch of delinquent girls. They were a dozen against her alone. That's right, Qi Shuyan is also quite unlucky. She was bullied in the washroom and now she has to be called to the police station for questioning. A classmate said, but this is even stranger. Since it wasn't Shuyan, then who could it be? Could it be their infighting? I don't think it's that simple. Do you guys think there's really something unclean in that second-floor restroom? Another female classmate chipped in, I heard from my friend that there seemed to be a girl, who really died in that second-floor restroom. I've heard it too. Rumors have it that she was ostracized by her class and a group of campus bullies caused it. Her parents suffered a financial loss and ended up with nothing. Xiao Min and Zheng Yuro were inexplicably cold in their hearts when they heard the gossip from their classmates. They felt some lingering fear that if they had stayed there yesterday, they might have been the ones lying in the hospital today. At the police station, a brightly dressed, well-maintained woman in her 30s looked angrily at a police officer and shouted, "Are you all incompetent? You can't even do this little thing. My daughter is still lying in the hospital and doesn't know when she'll wake up, but you just let the murderer go. Aren't you the public servants of the people? I want you to arrest her. I don't believe my daughter's coma has nothing to do with her. Mrs. Wu, please calm down. We, the police, are already investigating the case." A police officer in his 40s was also a bit impatient. He'd explained to her many times, but this woman didn't listen at all. If it wasn't for her backstage in Fuzhou, he would have long cursed. Fine, I'll give you 3 days, but this person is a prime suspect, so I ask you to detain and investigate her carefully. Yang Yuzhen accused and pointed crudely to the side where Qi Shuyan was sitting. After Yang Yuzhen finished, a cynical female police officer couldn't stand it anymore, and stood up abruptly in retort, "Mrs. Wu, could you get things straight? Just because there are no cameras in the washroom doesn't mean there aren't any elsewhere in the school. What we have seen is that your daughter led a large group of delinquent girls and troubled someone else's daughter. To put it in a bad way, if your daughter wasn't in hospital, who knows who would end up detained? What do you mean? My daughter deserves to be in the hospital, is that it? Have you any compassion, Officer Huang? Is this the quality of your officers? I want to talk to your leader." Yang Yuzhen's face changed instantly upon hearing the female officer's retort, and she glared at Sun Tzu in a towering rage. "Hey, Mrs. Wu, my subordinate merely spoke her mind, so you shouldn't fight with an insignificant police officer like her, lest you lose your status. Officer Huang hurriedly placated with a smile. Don't play dumb with me. Yang Yuzhen pushed Officer Huang away and pointed at Sun Tzu. She slandered my daughter just now. This time, I must meet your leader to see what sort of man actually taught such a subordinate. Mrs. Wu wants to see me. A masculine voice interjected and a tall, imposing man clad in a police uniform walked in. Yang Yuzhen turned her head and was just about to let her temper loose, but upon having a good look at the person, she immediately quelled the anger on her face and both respectfully and somewhat ingratiatingly greeted with a smile. It turns out to be Director Feng, long time no see. Feng Yuanlin was in his early 20s when he first took the chair in the Fuzhou Public Security Bureau. He was a full-fledged young talent so to speak, and his political achievements were even more impressive in the past few years. His future prospects were boundless, plus he was from the capital and has a deep background. Even Yang Yuzhen's husband, Wu Guanyao, privately tried to bend over backwards to curry favor with him. So naturally, Yang Yuzhen knew that he was a person she couldn't afford to offend. Yang Yuzhen obviously didn't expect to run into him at this time, and was momentarily rather elated. Is Madam displeased with the men I teach? Feng Yuanlin raised his eyebrows with his pair of sharp, cold eyes trained towards Yang Yuzhen. When Yang Yuzhen heard Feng Yuanlin's question, she blanched in fear and shook her head in a panic. No, I'm just here to consult on the progress of the case. The moment she was reminded of her behavior in the police station just now, which might have given Feng Yuanlin a very bad impression of her, her guts immediately turned green with regret. I see, it turned out to be a consultation, and here I thought Madam was treating the police station as a vegetable market. Feng Yuanlin said nonchalantly with majestic eyes, I'd also like to ask Madam not to interfere with official duties here. After all, my officers are busy. Yang Yuzhen was still in the mood to curry favor, but now that Feng Yuanlin left no room for weasel words, she immediately left in embarrassment. Pooh, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Sun Tzu spat towards Yang Yuzhen's back. Chapter 13. Change classes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Feng Yuanlin obviously saw at a glance a young girl of 16 or 17 years old sitting next to Sun Tzu, wearing a school uniform, and holding a water glass. He was especially impressed with her pair of huge feline eyes, and instantly reminded him of the cat he had at home. Feng Yuanlin swept her a glance and frowned as he ordered, Sun Tzu, come in. Then, he went inside the office. Yes, Director Feng. Sun Tzu gave him a standard salute, and before going in, she deliberately sidled to Qi Shuyan's ear and said, you don't have to be afraid. We, under Feng's office, are very nice and fair people. Whoever comes to mess with us again won't get away with it. Thank you, Sister Sun Tzu. With her big, round eyes and a bit of baby fat on her face, Qi Shuyan looked well-behaved and beautiful, especially when she sincerely thanked Sun Tzu and grinned, exposing 2 small incisors. She was so cute that old Aunt Sun Tzu's heart was going to melt. Before she left, she couldn't help but touch Qi Shuyan's hair, which was just as soft and smooth as she had imagined. What's the issue with that girl just now? Feng Yuanlin asked, what is she guilty of? The second Feng Yuanlin inquired, Sun Tzu immediately narrated the cause and effect of the incident, and the more she recounted, the more indignant she became. Director Feng, good thing you came just in time. Otherwise, I don't know how long that woman would have pestered us. She's got some nerve. It was her own daughter who bullied her classmates. She didn't know how she sustained injuries and yet the perpetrator had the audacity to accuse the victim. When Sun Tzu noticed Feng Yuanlin's stern gaze, she immediately curbed her tongue and stood there with trepidation. Sun Tzu, this fiery temper of yours needs to be changed. Don't always let your emotions get the better of you. Feng Yuanlin stared her down. He reprimanded her a few more times, then waved her out. Qi Shuyen was drinking hot water in small sips when Sun Su came out. Her cheeks were bulging like a squirrel's. Did Director Feng discipline you again? Sun Su, how many times has it been? Last time, you beat that prisoner up until he couldn't recognize his mother. If it weren't for Director Feng this time, would you have bashed someone again? Officer Huang couldn't resist harping as soon as Sun Su came out. Geez, no kidding, Director Feng has just lectured me, and now you're lecturing me again. Sun Su was actually under Feng Yuanlin before, but then made some mistakes, so she was transferred to Officer Huang. She added dismissively, the guy I beat last time deserved it. He was a rapist, but had the nerve to talk rubbish about setting up victims. Of course, my fists itched. As if noticing Qi Shuyen's curious gaze, Sun Su coughed twice, signaling Officer Huang not to expose her shortcomings in front of the child. Officer Huang, you should have asked pretty much the same thing. It's almost noon and the kid still has to go to school. Sun Su said. Officer Huang also nodded, indicating that Qi Shuyen could leave. Before leaving, Qi Shuyen glanced at Sun Su again and suddenly said, Sister Sun Su, when you go home tonight, don't crave convenience and remember to take the main road. She finished and left regardless of the expression on the two's faces. Qi Shuyen returned to school in the afternoon, but misfortunes never came in ones. The class teacher, Wen Mingzhu, criticized Qi Shuyen without qualms for being worthless in front of the whole class. She took advantage of her last monthly exam results to make a big deal out of it, and finally informed her to change classes. Lo Ningen First Middle School was divided into fast and slow streams, I.E. A-B classes. Those with excellent grades were concentrated in fast streams, while those with poorer grades were assigned to the slow stream, where the usual rankings after exams were taken. For students, being kicked out of the fast stream was an utter disgrace, not to mention Qi Shuyen, who was directly named, criticized, and notified publicly. Plus, they were at a critical time. Soon, half a month away was the college entrance exams. If someone was of poor psychological quality, let alone review properly, he might have been ashamed to meet anyone, having lost his face. Similarly, someone who had good mental qualities might still have been traumatized to some degree. Thankfully, she wasn't really a child. Qi Shuyen looked up at the righteous but actually snobbish class teacher, who had fawned over Wu Wenyan's family in her previous life. Furthermore, she had also received a lot of private gifts from Wu Wenyan's mother, that was why she had the utmost care for Wu Wenyan's group. She naively thought that the class teacher neglected her because her grades weren't good enough. Qi Shuyen guessed at once that Wu Wenyan's mother, Yang Yuzhen, must have called the class teacher when she saw no advantage at the police station and had nowhere to vent her outrage. Wen Mingzhu was flabbergasted when Qi Shuyen remained calm after she admonished her for a long time. She thought for sure she'd cry her eyes out and blush with shame at being dressed down. But, she was disinclined to listen to Qi Shuyen's interminable wailing, so she was in a better mood. Hence, she threw her a bone, I was also compelled. You must understand my pains. Although it's a parallel class, the 5th class teacher teaches more slowly, so it also suits your learning pace. Alright, teacher doesn't need to sugarcoat anything. I'm willing to transfer classes. Qi Shuyen smoothed her hair behind her ear and said with a bright smile, I also know you've been upset that my dad didn't give you a gift. How many more gifts did Wu Wenyan's mother give you this time? There's no need to hoodwink me like this. Qi Shuyen. What nonsense are you talking about? When Mingzhu first looked at Qi Shuyen in shock and then in rage. No student in her long teaching career had ever dared to speak to her so bluntly, even more so an introverted girl, who had always been silent and shy in her impression. Without waiting for Wen Mingzhu to say anything more, Qi Shuyen carried her school bag and twisted her head towards the whole class with a wry smile, how nice, it's nice that I'm going to that class. Please continue to treat me as if you don't know me in the future, I'd appreciate it. After saying that, she gave the class a bow, turned her head and walked away. The classroom was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. All the students in the senior class were dumbfounded that the formerly shy and introverted Qi Shuyan dared to call the class teacher out openly, and was also amazed looking at her dashing back. Thinking back to what she had just said, they were strangely struck with a tinge of guilt. In fact, Qi Shuyan is only occasionally slow and introverted, but she did nothing wrong. A kind-hearted female classmate spoke quietly. Yeah, she didn't do anything bad at all. Why do we all expect her to make a fool of herself so much? I feel a bit bad for her. Another female classmate also muttered. Most of the students were silent, but they already had the answer in their hearts. It was roughly from a pack mentality. They gloated watching someone's misfortunes with the thought that they weren't doing anything wrong, when in fact, they have long since fallen into the category of cynical accomplices. Chapter 14. Do business. You are listening at novelfull.audio. To tell the truth, contrary to the complex feelings of guilt of her senior classmates, Qi Shuyan was really quite happy. She had no favorable impression of these classmates, who watched indifferently and took delight in her misery in her past life. She was even more disgusted with that class teacher, who sided with the powerful. Being able to leave that unpleasant place in her past life, she was genuinely relieved and had nothing to worry about. Moreover, she had also found that grades were sometimes disproportionate to human virtue. When she first transferred to the 5th class, she expected to be questioned as to why. She had long ago gone out of her way to speculate about the utmost malice of human nature. But to her surprise, the students in the 5th class treated her like an ordinary transfer student. They warmly welcomed her and did what they ought to do, without exposing Qi Shuyan's scars. Not the least bit. Besides, she wasn't the former Qi Shuyan, who was not only terrible in interpersonal relationships, but also shy and introverted. Having experienced violent storms and waves, she became quite lively in nature too. So she was pretty comfortable in the 5th class and made a few ordinary friends. On top of that, the management of the slow stream was much more relaxed than the fast stream. It was easy to ask for leave, which was especially satisfying to Qi Shuyan. She didn't want to be bored in school and study again. So, she started taking a leave of absence twice every 3 days. The class teacher was kind enough to talk her out of it at first, but seeing how Qi Shuyan insisted, she had nothing left to do but to let her go. The bridge under the riverfront buildings had always been the home of Chinese geomancy or feng shui fortune tellers. Every single one of them were dressed in a lofty, dignified manner amidst a myriad of items, such as Chinese fortune sticks, fortune copper coins, ink brush, white paper, and a lot of other things placed on the table. Then, underneath the table were all sorts of ritual artifacts necessary in the market, while a fortune-telling sign stood in front of their tables. But today was extra special, with the arrival of a beautiful little girl in a casual outfit. There was a stack of yellow talismans on the girl's desk, and a large pile of white rabbit candy. In front of her table stood a sign written in bold cursive calligraphy that read, "Divine Strategy in Miraculous Insight." Little girl, what about old Liang who had set up his stall here before? On her right side, Master Yuan, who was purported to be the 108th head descendant of Yuan Tiangang. Yuan Tiangang was a Tang dynasty fortune teller who wrote the Tuibei Tu, a Chinese fortune book, asked curiously. Qi Shuyan glanced at him and shook her head. I gave him 200 yuan, and he seated the pen, ink, paper, inkstone, and table on this stand. Little girl, are you here to experience life or to sell snacks part-time? Then, you'd better get up and promote, but I think it's more profitable to sell candied fruits. On her left side, Master Li, who was purported to be Li Chuanfeng's successor, also suggested. No, I'm not here to sell snacks, I'm a fortune teller. Qi Shuyan took a big white rabbit creamy candy unfettered and pointed to the sign next to her with her cheeks puffed out. Master Yuan and Master Li instantly stared blankly at her. They had never seen a female fortune teller master, who looked like an 17 or 18-year-old child. Could it be that this child dropped out of school at random with this idea? The most important point was that pile of white rabbit creamy candy on her table. The two masters shook their heads. She'd better dress and act like one. Otherwise, who would ask her to tell their fortune? Don't children of your age believe more in those Western tarot cards, Western astrology or horoscopes and whatnot? Master Li then consulted her shamelessly and said that his business had been bad lately, so if those Western mystical arts were more in demand, he'd have to learn a few more trades too. Not really, I still think fortune-telling in our country is more orthodox. Qi Shuyan smiled faintly. Yeah, sigh, if only these kids' minds were as enlightened as yours. Master Yuan sighed. Qi Shuyan laughed, without saying a word. Lifting a cinnabar pen on a yellow talisman, she drew a magic inscription like moving clouds and flowing water. Wow, that's a nice pattern you painted, it looks a bit interesting. How much do you charge for a paper talisman? Master Li leaned in closer for a look. Still, with a smart kid like you can save a lot of costs if you beautifully paint everything yourself like this. Qi Shuyan didn't stop until she finished writing the last stroke of a Chinese character. Under the dazzling sunlight, the glow of the talisman was directly obscured, then she lifted her head and extended 5 fingers. 50, Master Li guessed. Qi Shuyan shook her head. This talisman had consumed a lot of her spiritual power, how could it be so cheap? 500, Master Yuan asked. 50,000 a talisman, but I'll offer a special price today first, so 5,000 a talisman. Qi Shuyan blinked her eyes and looked at the two people aside. I wonder if you two are interested in anything. Master Li and Master Yuan shook their heads with a rattle, and retreated back to their stalls. They realized that this girl had a problem with her head. She dared to sell that talisman for 5,000. Sure enough, young people were over-ambitious. The most important thing about fortune-telling was that it was easy and relatively less risky. Selling talismans would more likely lead to a pitfall. On Qi Shuyan's first day of business, there were quite a lot of people coming, but these people took a curious glance at her and her stall, then uniformly chose other stalls. Mom, why are you still believing in this? Modern science promotes and opposes feudal superstition. Even if some supernatural phenomena occur, they can be explained scientifically. A young man in his 30s said with impatience to a woman in her 60s. The woman was wearing a string of Buddhist beads on her wrists and a red string jade Buddha around her neck. She was clearly either a fan of metaphysics or a believer in Buddhism. People of her age believed in gods and Buddhas and were extremely gullible. Sometimes, spending money for them was just for peace of mind. For many fortune-tellers, the risk was small and the transaction was an easy deal. Though they were good at heart, many fortune-tellers were on the lookout when they saw this woman. Zhao Zicheng tried to persuade his mother, apparently unwilling to give the hard-earned cash to these fortune-telling crooks. If he'd said this in the past, his mother wouldn't have gone against his wishes, and even if she really wanted to go to a fortune-teller, she'd do it behind his back. He'd just turn a blind eye to it. Unfortunately, today was a bit special because his father was in the hospital. Even after Zhao Zicheng's sound reasoning, he still failed to get through to his mother. Zhao Zicheng's worried mother looked at several fortune-telling stalls and scanned several of them indecisively, not knowing which one to go to. Zhao Zicheng looked around and of course noticed the stir among the fortune-tellers. If he hesitated any longer, they'd probably all come down to hustle. He sneered. Just as many fortune-tellers looked on expectantly, he pulled his mother without hesitation and walked towards Qi Shuyan's stall, with the eyes of a whole bunch of fortune-tellers watching him. Chapter 15. Prophecy came true. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhao Zicheng couldn't argue with his mother, but that didn't mean he'd willingly become someone with more money than sense. Even if he were to spend money foolishly, he should have at least found someone pleasing to the eye. Little girl, how much do you charge for a single divination here? Zhao Zicheng frowned at the beautiful, fair-skinned little girl in front of him, who was definitely no more than 18 years old. A girl her age should have still been in senior middle school. Have a seat, 500 for a single divination, Qi Shuyan smiled sweetly. Regardless of her personality, her looks were extremely deceptive, with round, black and white eyes, fair skin, baby fat, and red lips. She looked cute and beautiful. Elders were very fond of her type. As soon as Aunt Zhao sat down, although she had doubts about the little girl's fortune-telling skills, she asked with a smile, "How old are you, little girl? What grade are you in? How did you get into this business at such a young age?" Not to mention Zhao Zicheng, even Aunt Zhao was skeptical about her. Aunt Zhao has a grandson and a granddaughter, and her grandson was about the same age as Qi Shuyan. Although they weren't exactly pampered and spoiled, they certainly would be eating watermelon and cooling under the air conditioner in this heat. There was no way in hell their family would let such a young child come out to make ends meet. Thus, Aunt Zhao thought that Qi Shuyan's family wasn't very well off. 17 years old and I'm in high school. The moment Aunt Zhao asked her, Qi Shuyan knew that she didn't believe she was a fortune-teller at all. Now, Zhao Zicheng's frown could even pinch a mosquito. Looking at Qi Shuyan's delicate skin, with red lips and white teeth, he felt for his wallet, fished out several red banknotes and said, "Little girl, it's not good for you to find a job, especially in this line of business. Besides, high school is a very important turning point and watershed in life. There's no future for you after dropping out of school. You're still too young to understand now, but it will be too late for regrets later. Take this money and go buy some food, and close this stall at once. It would be terrible if you suffer from a heatstroke in this heat wave." Zhao Zicheng, himself, had a son and daughter at home. They weren't exactly pampered and spoiled, but they were well cared for. Watching this little girl come out to make a living in this heat, Zhao Zicheng couldn't help but feel a bit distressed. Qi Shuyan was a bit helpless. Listening to this gentleman and his mother singing the same tune, she was certain that they must have been imagining something. She looked at the 5 red tickets on the table, smiled and said, "Since it's fate that brought you two here, why don't I read your fortune? Okay, do your calculations, then close up early after." Zhao Zicheng shook his head and let out a sigh. This child was considered a lost cause, but high school was the most crucial time. "Aunt, you must have come for your husband this time." This uncle was the eldest in the family. His parents originally doted on him, but since they had a second son, his parents' attitude became cold and neglectful. "Uncle, and you had a few hiccups in your relationship, but you're still on good terms. You should have a son and 2 daughters. Your eldest daughter unfortunately died prematurely. Uncle was admitted to the hospital because of an argument with his brother and accidentally rolled down the stairs. Plus a high blood pressure, he was now in the intensive care unit, am I right?" Qi Shuyan said slowly, looking at Aunt Zhao. Aunt Zhao looked at Qi Shuyan in shock, obviously not expecting this little girl to be so accurate in her reading. She had countless fortune reading, but most fortune tellers had been ambiguous and never been so precise. Her husband once told her that his parents had been good to him as a child, but since the birth of his brother, they'd started to take sides. Moreover, back when she and her husband fell in love and began dating, they almost broke up because his parents were against their relationship. That had been a bit of an emotional roller coaster. But since their marriage, her husband treated her very well, and their first daughter she gave birth to indeed died prematurely. This time, her husband was also in the ICU for no apparent reason and remained in a coma. "Master, then can you tell me when my husband will wake up? Will there be any sequelae?" Aunt Zhao grabbed her hand and asked anxiously, not daring to underestimate this young girl anymore. Zhao Zicheng witnessed how his mother first looked in shock and then in conviction. He sighed helplessly. It never occurred to him that this girl would have a few brushes to spare tricking others. He had read such fortune-telling posts on the internet. In fact, it was simply a matter of understanding human psychology. Anyone with superb observation skills could tell that his mother was worried, so something must have happened to her family. "Mom, calm down. You forgot that there is only me and big sister in our family. When has there been a son and 2 daughters?" Zhao Zicheng found a flaw and looked coldly at the little girl to see her reaction. However, he didn't expect his mother to twist her head, rubbed her red eyes and said, "This girl is right. You did have an older sister. In fact, your current older sister is actually your second sister. Your eldest sister died early because she was born with a weak body. It's been a long time ago and I haven't told you about her all these years." This time, it was Zhao Zicheng's turn to stare blankly, incredulous at what his mother said. It turned out that his mother really had a daughter who died early. But despite this, Zhao Zicheng was still a little skeptical. "Master, don't be offended. My son is like this. By the way, can you continue telling me about my husband's illness? Will he get better?" Aunt Zhao asked anxiously and worriedly. Qi Shuyan paused for a moment, then hesitated. Zhao Zicheng took one look at her hesitance and was immediately unconvinced again. Was she mulling over how to scam them? His heart was distinctly on alert. This girl wouldn't pull a pile of sh*t to win his mother's trust, then sell them a bunch of ritual artifacts, right? After tonight, Uncle will certainly wake up in the morning. As long as he recuperates well, there will be no lingering effects. Qi Shuyan swept the two with a complex glance. "I just have a word of advice. That uncle's brother has no blood relationship with your family and is of disagreeable character, so you'd best stay away from him." After saying this, Qi Shuyan looked at the sky and smiled. "You two are kind-hearted, plus it's my first day of business today, so take this talisman, mister." After that, Qi Shuyan stood up, still aloof and with the bearing of someone superior. Zhao Zicheng stared at her in a daze. Did he really fail to recognize a great talent? Until he saw the little girl pick up her big jar of white rabbit creamy candy and hop away. Zhao Zicheng. Why did he feel like they'd been cheated? Was that girl really a fortune-teller? The next day, Zhao Zicheng and his mother went to the hospital to see his dad, and to their surprise, his dad was indeed awake and had been transferred from the ICU to the general ward. The doctor also said that as long as the patient wasn't greatly stimulated, there wouldn't be any problems. Zhao Zicheng apparently remembered yesterday's fortune-telling, so he asked his father how he fainted. His father sighed and replied, "Your second uncle almost lost his wife's money in the stock market. He wanted to borrow 300,000 from me, but I didn't have that much money to lend him, so we had an argument and I accidentally fell down the stairs." Zhao Zicheng was inwardly alarmed. He knew his dad fell down the stairs, but he really didn't know it was due to second uncle. That girl's reading was amazingly accurate. It seemed like he'd have to take a DNA test in a few days to verify whether his uncle was truly a relative. If not, then the fact that his father had labored so hard all these years for that family, being filial to his eccentric parents, and raising his second uncle as his own son, would be the biggest joke of all. Chapter 16. Director Feng received VIPs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 16. Director Feng received VIPs. When Sun Su arrived at the police station to work, she found the atmosphere a bit strange. Several female officers were all gathered together in a frenzy exchanging gossip. She knew these colleagues. They were dedicated and seriously conscientious to their work, and rarely got this excited. Some were moms in their late 30s and weren't as interested in hyped celebrities on TV as young girls nowadays. Seeing Sun Su coming in, a female officer waved at her. "Sun Su, do you know what happened today?" The female officer was excited. "Someone proposed in public at the police station." "Heck, no. Then which young heiresses have fallen over each other again in their rush to fawn upon Director Feng?" She looked at Sun Su and whined wordlessly, "Are we that bored?" Those are nothing, we're merely people who are marveling much for having seen too little. Sun Tzu was in full agreement. One after the other, her colleagues came close to looking like love-struck fools of 17 or 18-year-old girls. She really couldn't guess, so she asked flippantly, "Well, I have no idea. It can't be that a heavenly handsome guy dropped by, right?" She had things on her mind and wasn't much bothered speculating the gossip. Unexpectedly, the female officer's eyes lit up and she patted Sun Tzu on the shoulder and said, "You've got potential." A tall and handsome guy did call on Director Feng. He seems to be from the capital, and from the way Director Feng entertained him discreetly, he must be in some high position and power. "Sun Tzu, I remember you are single, take your chances." "Yup, if I were 10 years younger, I'd jump at the chance to try it, if he's indeed a lady-killer." "Huh, can you really bear to push away that kid of yours?" A whole bunch of female officers ridiculed that one cop's grand aspiration and heroic speech. Sun Tzu was amazed to see that the gossipy nature of these mother colleagues was ignited. It seemed that the man who came should have definitely been a super handsome guy. Why else would even these people, with their families in tow, be so excited and rippling with the stirrings of love? "Sun Tzu, give this information to Director Feng," Officer Huang shouted at Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu coughed, hurriedly dropped off her stuff and took the file. In the envious eyes of all the female officers, she looked in bewilderment and uncertainty at the tall and strong bodyguards in suits standing at the doorway of Director Feng's office. The strapping bodyguards, whose muscles were as hard as stone, had their hands behind their backs. Coming into contact with the bodyguard's sharp bloodthirsty eyes, Sun Tzu could tell at a glance that they were definitely not ordinary bodyguards. Those sort of eyes were only seen from outlaws. Although the bodyguards exuded an air of idlers, stay away, Sun Tzu still calmly explained her purpose. One of the bodyguards nodded faintly without a word and knocked on Director Feng's office. "Let her in, she's one of my subordinates." Director Feng's voice was muffled and low, surprisingly soliciting permission from the person inside. Sun Tzu didn't take it seriously when she heard her colleague saying that it was someone in power, but she was now shocked and deeply convinced. In Fuzhou, who hadn't tried and hoped to suck up to Director Feng. This was the first time Director Feng had been punctilious, so Sun Tzu straightened her back and started to treat her task seriously. "Ninth Master said to let the female officer in." A gentle male voice came. This time, the two bodyguards didn't block her anymore. After Sun Tzu entered, she realized that there were 3 other people in Director Feng's office besides him. There were 2 people sitting on the set of black leather sofas in Director Feng's office, one was standing to the side, while Director Feng was also seated on the sofa talking to one of the men. "Director Feng, Officer Huang asked me to pass this information to you." Sun Tzu held her breath and handed the file to Feng Yuanlin seriously. Feng Yuanlin took it, nodded, and said indifferently, "I know, you may go. I'll check it." Sun Tzu wasn't actually a very curious person, but after her colleague's exaggerations, plus the fact that Director Feng was so punctilious and cautious, Sun Tzu's curiosity was a bit piqued. She took a glimpse of the man out of the corner of her eye across from Director Feng as he took the information. When she got a good look at the man, she was immediately stunned. The man across from Director Feng was wearing a tailored, silver-gray suit without a tie, and only a handkerchief of the same color that was a little darker than silver-gray on his left chest. His hair was styled meticulously without a single strand out of place, showing off his thick brows and austere appearance. The man's facial features could practically be described as incomparably handsome, with his tall and narrow nose, and thin diamond-shaped lips. Just looking at his fathomless and tall, straight nose, one would suspect that he was of mixed blood. But his looks were completely devoid of any hint of European ruggedness. With skin so white, he's almost pale, and thin bloody diamond-shaped lips. But even so, no hint of femininity could be detected in him. On the contrary, he was gorgeously graceful, the kind of noble blood that had been passed down from thousands of generations. He was sitting on the sofa without batting an eyelid, but his whole body radiated a reserved detachment and pure intimidating pressure. The bearing of someone extraordinary. Even when confronting Director Fong, who was always overbearing and majestic, Sun Tzu wasn't really afraid. But when the man cast a sidelong glance at her with those cold starry eyes, Sun Tzu was so frightened she almost lost her footing and fled. When she walked out of the door, Sun Tzu took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. She secretly wondered. She was neither a love-struck fool, nor a wimp. That man was obviously so stunning he could make her lose her soul, but her legs just turned jelly. But then, that man's momentum was too terrifying. How was it? One female officer asked how she felt about seeing the handsome guy. Sun Tzu gave a thumbs up, dead gorgeous, he's just a little scary. After her comment, the other female officers nodded heavily in an instant. Yeah, we wouldn't have given you the information delivery task if that handsome guy wasn't so scary. Several of the policewomen were deeply impressed. Sun Tzu smiled and sat down in her seat. Although stunning, she also knew that this kind of handsome man was one of those men with high authority. They absolutely had no chance. So she didn't dwell much on it, and instead, chewed over the warning that little girl with big feline eyes had solemnly reminded her on the day she left. That day, that little girl told her to take the main road and to be careful. She thought it was that girl's casual concern and didn't take it to heart. But that day after work, as she was passing through a sparsely populated, dark alley, that girl's words jolted into her mind. Sun Tzu hesitated, but still took another path home. When she detoured to a bright road, she even slapped herself on the forehead and burst into laughter. That alley was a shortcut she often took and she'd never had an accident. Yet, she actually listened to that girl's words as if bewitched. Despite this complaint, she took a detour. Until the next day when her father drew her with trepidation and pointed to a news article, and said, "Is this the alley, where the incident happened, the one you always take coming home?" Sun Tzu was holding a slice of bread in her mouth, and when she got a good look at what was on that news item, she was instantly gobsmacked and her rosy cheeks turned pale. Last night, a territorial firefight broke out between two gangs in the alley she used to take, and many people had died. And the timing was right after she got off work. She shuddered to think what would have happened to her if she had gone down that road last night. These bunch of gangs loathed cops. If she had rashly walked in, she certainly would have been involved. Chapter 17. A customer came. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Director Feng's office. Only after Sun Tzu went out did Feng Yuanlin talk to Qi Zhenbai. Your health is in such a state, yet you took a trip to Fuzhou. Feng Yuanlin asked somewhat in reproach and disapproval. Was Grandpa Qi at ease? Even your brothers and sisters too. Besides, what the hell is there here that's worth the trip? You could have just made a phone call and sent someone along and I'd have gotten it done for you. Qi Zhenbai pulled out the handkerchief on his left chest, folded it neatly, covered his lips, and coughed twice, tugging at his diamond-shaped thin lips, his voice clear and low. It's precisely because they've been worried and treating me like a fragile piece of porcelain all day that I came out for a breath of fresh air. Here, Wui Rock tea, moisten your throat. Feng Yuanlin brewed a cup of tea and placed it in front of Qi Zhenbai. He held two other cups and put one in front of Zhu Buchen, and the other to Su Sudong on his right side. He smiled toward Su Sudong, who had been standing beside Qi Zhenbai, and said, "Assistant Su, sit down and have a cup of tea too. Thank you for taking care of Zhenbai these days. His temper isn't stress-free." Assistant Su showed a polite and gentle smile towards Feng Yuanlin. Young Master Feng needn't be polite. Taking care of young Master Qi is originally my duty. But instead of sitting down and drinking tea, he remained standing. Feng Yuanlin didn't mind either. Hey, Feng Yuanlin, are you just going to ignore a big, living man like me? If you're thankful, why not thank me? I've even gone all the way to put down my company's affairs to accompany Zhenbai over here. Zhu Buqing grinned cheerfully. It's really been so long since I've seen you, and you look more and more like those old men playing official. It's giving me the goosebumps just listening to you. How dare you say that? It's precisely because you're here that I'm even more worried, Feng Yuanlin sneered. What are you doing here? Aren't there many beautiful women in the capital? They aren't enough to satisfy you. Look at him, Zhenbai. Look at the way he's been holding a gun and stick between his legs, making me sound degenerate. How many times have I apologized, but he still stabs me as soon as he sees me. Zhu Buqing cried out, Hey, Feng, you've been holding on to this one thing for too long. You're so petty. I've apologized for your younger sister, haven't I? Qi Zhenbai's crystal clear and distinctly bony hand picked up the cup and took a sip to wet his red lips, but he remained impassive. Apparently, he wasn't surprised to see the steady-looking Feng Yuanlin, when he ran into Zhu Buqing, and the two childhood friends immediately started bickering with each other unrelentingly. My younger sister. You're less likely to stick gold in my face. Feng Yuanlin took a sip from his teacup. Zhenbai is here on business, what have you come here for? Then, you've underestimated me too, how could you label me? Zhu Buqing grinned widely and cocked his legs, holding up his cup of tea and drinking it all down, and I'm here on official business, of course. He drank a cup of tea and felt that it wasn't enough. He smacked his lips with his tongue and poured himself another cup. He swirled the tiny teacup in his hand and slurred, what thirst can be quenched with this sort of tiny teacup? Such is art. This is a valuable collection and you're purely benefiting from Zhenbai's light. I wouldn't have taken this tea set out if you had come alone instead. If Feng Yuanlin wasn't concerned about his image, he really would have rolled his big eyes, although he also thought that this tiny cup of tea couldn't quench one's thirst. Zhu Buqing was right. Elders would drink big mouthfuls and eat big chunks of meat, but his mouth was still unforgiving. Oh, I understand, you're here to show off your wealth. Zhu Buqing grinned with a row of white teeth and an infuriating smile. I told you that you're one of those big old men, you weren't such a sissy before. Feng Yuanlin squinted and stared daggers at him. Who are you calling sissy? Do you want to compare? His tendons crunched as he moved his wrists around while talking. Zhu Buqing instantly went quiet as a mouse and cried inside. A man from the military academy had the nerve to compare with him, an ordinary rich second generation. Seeing Zhu Buqing's response, Feng Yuanlin felt too lazy to bother with him, so he turned to Qi Zhenbai across from him and said, I will arrange accommodation for you first. Shall I accompany you to visit Elder Lin tomorrow? Qi Zhenbai shook his head as his beautiful slender eyes flashed with traces of helplessness. No need, Buqing and Sudong will just accompany me. Feng Yuanlin was about to say something else, but Qi Zhenbai's slender eyes, which were as cold as the stars in a winter night, drifted over in a clear and indifferent manner, hiding an irresistible majesty in them. It directly stopped him from saying anything else. Feng Yuanlin touched his nose and had to shut up so as not to displease Qi Zhenbai. Under the bridge at Riverside Building, little girl, which school are you from? You've really got some looks. Master Yuan to the side had a whole new level of respect for her. He didn't expect that this delicate girl could tell one lie after another with poise and calm. Little girl, your style is really similar to mine back when I was younger. Master Li also gave a thumbs up. This little girl could fool anyone without blushing or her heart jumping. If you were a man and a bit more experienced, you'd certainly have a future. But I still can't figure it out, how could you tell at a glance who was sick from that family? Moreover, you said it like you meant it. It's as if you weren't mistaken, and I think they believed it. I saw it through their faces. Qi Shuyan smiled faintly. The features of the palm and face contained the direction of one's fortune. She could have a look at the face and palms and roughly gauge misfortunes and fortunes. Fortune-telling and figuring past events weren't really hard for a celestial master like her. What was difficult was calculating the aftermath. She couldn't guarantee what would happen in someone's life because there were too many variables in life, and one move could trigger a butterfly effect. But things that would occur soon were still relatively simple. Reading someone from his body language, I understand this. Master Yuan and Master Li nodded inwardly. This line of business was all about understanding the psychology of the customer. Discerning someone's thoughts from his body language was a fact they'd long known. But this little girl learned it to the point of perfection, so she must have been a real talent. They'd studied so much, yet they'd only acquired superficial knowledge. Sure enough, young people came forth in droves. They were the waves at the back who pushed forward the waves to the front before they would be shot dead on the sandy beach. They were chatting away when a luxury car came to a screeching halt in front of the fortune tellers' booths. The eyes of several fortune tellers lit up all at once, clearly thinking that a fat sheep had come to be slaughtered. A young man dressed in branded casual wear and exuding extravagance rushed out from the Lamborghini luxury car, with anxiety and depression shading his face. He took a few casual glances and headed straight for the nearest, Master Li's stall. The other fortune tellers, who saw him walking towards Master Li's booth, wrung their hands inwardly for a moment. "This master, I want you to read my fortune." Master Li immediately shed off the image of the leisurely old man, chattering just moments ago, straightened his back, put on a profoundly mysterious look on his face, and with a sage-like smile, he stroked his little goatee. "Please have a seat, this poor Taoist has long anticipated the arrival of a noble guest. Little brother, from your physiognomy, you must be from a wealthy family. Your fate couldn't be spoken and you've been smooth sailing in the past, but this year has been a bit rough, it's your unlucky year." Master Li was wearing a Taoist robe and looked otherworldly. Once the young man heard Master Li's reading, he suddenly stared bug-eyed at him and said, "That's right, I did get into some trouble recently, what do you think I should do?" Chapter 18. Millennium Spirit Gathering Tortoise. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Master Li stroked his beard again and said a few plausible things, while glancing at the young man out of the corner of his eyes from time to time. The more the young man listened to what Master Li had to say, the tighter his frown became. The first part was fine, but the latter part, he increasingly felt like he was talking nonsense. He interrupted Master Li's next line and urged, "So what do you think I should do?" Master Li choked for a moment. Unexpectedly, this young man was so difficult to fool, so he could only appease him, "This can't be rushed, everyone has his own fate." The young man couldn't bear to listen anymore. He quickly waved his hand to interrupt him, and after paying him the fee, he consulted other fortune tellers' booths. The outcome. Several fortune tellers served him different broth but the same old medicine. After consulting for half of the day, they either dropped a bag of books and fabricated some abstract theories, or a whole lot of ambiguous nonsense, or peddled some ritual artifacts. Qi Shuyan couldn't help but shake her head and chuckle as she listened to these fortune tellers talking nonsense. This teenager should have really run into trouble, otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a rush so badly. Unfortunately, these fortune tellers were mostly relying on wild guesses to tell fortunes. Su Yeren was seriously wrought up. Otherwise, he wouldn't have pinned his hopes on these fortune tellers that he normally disdained and wouldn't even bother to look at. What a pity that these people were talking nonsense one way or another, none of them had true ability or genuine material. He might be wrought up, but his IQ was still existent. Hearing the rubbish of these fortune tellers, he nearly hurled all kinds of abuse. When he heard a faint chuckle, he thought someone was mocking him. He turned his head and was about to curse rudely. But upon seeing that it was a very young and pretty little girl, with a pair of large, round, feline eyes, Su Yeren's breathing hitched. He eased his face, walked up to Qi Shuyan, looked at the yellow talisman on her table, and asked, "Are you the owner of this stall? What are these talismans you're selling?" "Yup, these are only protective talismans and a sickness ward talismans." Qi Shuyan blinked her eyes and recommended, "The ghostly aura in your body is not serious and you have plenty of yang energy, so a sickness ward talisman will suffice to nurse yourself back in a few days. Su Yeren was originally in despair and made a last attempt to remedy the hopeless situation. Now that he was here, he could only go to a few more stalls. Sadly, those fortune tellers at several booths were almost similar, making him frustrated and thinking that they were all swindlers. He didn't expect to get in front of this young girl, who looked like she was smuggling goods, and she explained his current condition right off the bat. Su Yeren stared gobsmacked at the gentle young, pretty girl in front of him with that pair of wide feline eyes and asked, "How did you know?" Qi Shuyan scrutinized him, pursed her lips and smiled softly, "Not only do I know that, but I also know that you took a trip to a grave with some friends some time ago, am I right? You're lucky, it's just some ghostly aura. Unfortunately, for your two companions." Su Yeren's eyes were wide with shock by the time Qi Shuyan was finished. How the hell did this girl know of this information? Did the news leak so quickly? But, that was impossible. Was this girl in front of him not a smuggler, but a real fortune teller? "Master, do you exorcise ghosts?" Su Yeren held a glimmer of hope in his heart. "I do, but I don't have time today. I have to hurry back home and do my homework." Qi Shuyan nodded and pointed to a talisman, "By this talisman." Su Yeren. What the hell was she talking about doing her homework? For some reason, he felt all the more that this girl was a fraud. "So, how much is this talisman?" Su Yeren frowned slightly and inquired. 50,000 apiece, no bargain, Qi Shuyan replied firmly. Su Yeren frowned incredulously again, 50,000 for one sheet. "It's too expensive." "Not at all, it's worth the money." Qi Shuyan laughed, "If you're looking for a few yuan each, I don't have one here. There should be a lot of stalls around here, you can go and have a look there." Su Yeren stared intently at Qi Shuyan and gritted his teeth, "Fine, give me 7 sickness ward talismans and 5 safety talismans." Qi Shuyan handed the talismans over to Su Yeren, and the two completed their trade. The fortune tellers nearby, coupled with Master Li and Master Yuan, looked at her enviously, but deep inside, they admitted that this girl was a better liar than they were. However, selling talismans could easily expose a pitfall. The young man looked like a tough kid to mess with. Was she thinking of running away once this deal was done? "Do you have any ghost ward talisman here?" Although Su Yeren didn't really trust Qi Shuyan either, compared to those glib-tongued fortune tellers, who fabricated crazy nonsense, Qi Shuyan described his situation succinctly, so he felt that she was more credible. "Not at the moment. If you need it in a few days, I'll draw you a few." Deep in her heart, Qi Shuyan was saying she had insufficient spiritual energy right now. Her medicinal bubble baths burned money, and this ghost ward talisman required a high level of spiritual energy. It seemed that she had to do some careful planning when she went back. These talismans were simply scraps in her previous life. Su Yeren merely nodded right after her reply and left. "Little girl, you've really got a way of fooling people." That young master was truly not of the common sort with his spending. "This big cash you've earned is enough to spend for a while," Master Yuan looked envious. Little girl, your way of fooling people really made even us old men willingly concede defeat, but you'd better find a place to run." Fooling that kind of naive young master was easy, but he's not easy to mess with. Maybe when he realizes he's been cheated, he'd bring a bunch of people to come after you. And with you so good looking, what if he makes you pay for your debts in kind? Master Li added. Qi Shuyan. These two masters were so well thought out. After Qi Shuyan earned a small fortune, she made a trip to the seafood shop and the herbal medicine shop to buy enough herbs for her baths. She loved clams and planned on cooking her own clam noodles tonight. So, she went to the seafood product area and wandered around the place. She didn't expect to immediately spot a Millennium Spirit Gathering tortoise mixed within a huge pile of common tortoises that were to be slaughtered. Qi Shuyan was overjoyed, as if she was dozing off and someone gave her a pillow. She had been worried about her own cultivation and insufficient spiritual energy. Now, drawing those talismans would be twice the results for half the effort. Little girl, this turtle stew is an excellent source of tonic. You've got a good eye, shall I catch one for you? The boss saw that the girl kept staring at the turtle and immediately marketed it. How much is this one? Not much, it's just 2,000. The boss surmised that the girl was too young and probably didn't have much money, and was afraid of scaring her away. But then, he had to say a suitably higher price. Girls were too good at haggling these days, so he offered a decent price. Okay then, I'll take this one. The boss, who was about to flex his muscles. Crap, the price he said was low. In the end, he still didn't go back on his word and even asked enthusiastically, it would be more troublesome to deal with it if you take it back to stew. Would you like me to kill it for you? Qi Shuyen immediately shook her head like a rattle-drum. I want to raise this. Do you have a bigger fish tank here, boss? Boss. Qi Shuyen took the spirit-gathering tortoise with her and went on another trip to the herbal shop to procure a roundup of spirit-gathering tortoise diet. She bought almost everything and went home in satisfaction. The next day several blinding luxury cars worth millions galloped menacingly towards the fortune-telling booths under the bridge at Riverside Building and stopped in the middle of Master Yuan and Master Li's stall. Master Yuan and Master Li widened their eyes one after the other, and in the back of their minds, thought that the little girl was going to be out of luck this time. Selling talismans might be more profitable than fortune-telling, but the pitfall was too easily exposed. Be Nov calm, where is she? Strange, that's the stall. Su Yeren was confused. Third brother, did you remember it wrong? Yang Hongxing said excitedly, how could it not be here? It's right, this is the place. Chapter 19. Call on someone to catch a ghost. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Yeren repeatedly confirmed that the location was correct, looked at the empty stall, was lost for a moment, and then frowned. Why didn't she come today? Did something happen in the interim? What are we going to do? Why didn't you think of getting her phone number or address back then? Where are we going to find her now? Yang Hongxing, who was in a bundle of nerves, complained. How would I have known that her talisman works? Besides, aren't there so many crooks these days? Alas, I should have known. Su Yeren sighed. He was just doctoring a dead horse as if it were alive at that time and didn't really pin much hope. Who would have imagined that things would take a new turn? Yang Hongxing also knew that there was no use complaining repeatedly about it. He suddenly slapped his thighs, burning with anxiety. We can afford to wait, but Big Brother can't. Think hard about what other clues you've got. Su Yeren looked at Yang Hongxing, who was filled with expectation that he would remember something, and rolled his eyes, feeling anxious and helpless too. I've gone over my conversation with her with you in detail, how could there be any more clues? I'd say you're really stupid. The master pointed out your ghostly aura, so obviously, she was a master of the highest caliber. If it were me, I'd have already asked for her contact details and address. Yang Hongxing glared at him and gave him an utterly pitying look. Su Yeren choked up, but cursed silently deep inside. Second brother might have been saying that he didn't have his undiscerning eyes, but with that little girl's age and appearance, he reckoned that he'd have ignored her as a swindler. Wasn't that a normal human reaction? Master Li and Master Yuan, who were close by and wanted to lend a hand after seeing the two anxiously searching for someone and didn't look like they were here to pick a fight, were so thrilled that their jaws almost dropped to the ground. Were the talismans that the girls sold really useful? Ugh, okay, let me think it over again. Su Yeren was also terribly anxious in his heart, and in his torment knocked his own head. He looked all over the place and on the side while pondering his options, and when he abruptly met Master Yuan and Master Li's gaze, his eyes lit up. Qi Shuyen didn't know that while she was diligently practicing at home to draw a ghost ward talisman, somebody was flying all over the place looking for her. Also, Both Master Yuan and Master Li were about to collapse from the interrogation of the two young men. They usually just gossiped happily with that pleasant-looking girl, so they didn't know much about her at all. Still, Master Li racked his brain to provide a useful piece of information. "You mean, she's a student at Ningyan First Middle School?" Su Yeren inquired. "Yeah, that girl is usually either drawing talismans or doing her homework here. I've seen the cover of her homework book, and it says Ningyan First Middle School." Master Yuan followed suit and thought for a while, attaching a more specific piece of information. "Oh right, she seems to be from the first class of the senior class." Su Yeren and Yang Hongsheng looked at each other, and after confirming the accuracy of the information, they quickly drove to Ningyan First Middle School's senior class. However, they found nobody. The entire class was there, but simply none of whom they were looking for. They couldn't have remembered incorrectly, right? Yang Hongsheng was disappointed. Su Yeren watched the comings and goings of the students, and the crowd surging, scratching his head. "I don't know, how are we to find her now?" Yang Hongsheng rolled his eyes and brightened up. "I got it, we can check the students' registration records." He poked at Su Yeren. "You should remember that person's face, right? It's absolutely impossible to forget her." Su Yeren beat his chest to vouch for the fact that he generally never forgot anyone who looked good. What's more, that little girl wasn't just good-looking. Su Yeren and Yang Hongsheng went to the principal's office and asked to check the school's student registration records. When the principal saw the two young masters coming, he secretly considered both the powerful families behind Su Yeren and Yang Hongsheng, and he didn't dare to offend them, so he had to let them check it out. "Found it," Su Yeren exclaimed excitedly. After searching for half the day, they finally found Qi Shuyan's student records. Qi Shuyan was about to go out to the supermarket to buy some food when two luxury cars blocked her way in front of her house. Su Yeren and Yang Hongsheng immediately opened the doors and got out of their cars, almost jogging all the way in front of Qi Shuyan. "Qi Master, do you still remember me? I bought talismans from your stall last time." Su Yeren always found it a little awkward calling a young girl, "Master," as if they were crooks. After a moment of hesitation, he asked earnestly. Qi Shuyan inspected him carefully, nodded and smiled. "Yes, I do. Your ghostly aura is almost gone, so those talismans should have been of some use, right?" Before Su Yeren could even say a word in reply, Yang Hongsheng on the side forcibly squeezed over and nodded wildly in utter agreement. He was all smiles and ingratiatingly answered, "Useful, very useful. Master Qi, thanks to the talisman you gave me, it drove away the ghost that possessed me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to stand up these days because of the binge eating and stuffing of the ghost that had possessed him." Qi Shuyan studied Yang Hongsheng, pointed at his eyebrows and said, "That hungry ghost that escaped seems to have marked you." Yang Hongsheng's smile instantly stiffened and he croaked in panic, "Marked? What does Master mean? The one that got away will still be looking for me." Su Yeren's heart also numbed with shock. He thought they were done with chasing the ghost away, but he didn't expect that there would be a follow-up. Would he have been marked as well then? Seeing both of them a bit scared and panic-stricken, Qi Shuyan thought to comfort them, "It's okay, it hasn't gained much attainment either. It just eats and drinks. Compared to other ghosts, its character is pretty mild and good." Yang Hongsheng wasn't comforted at all, however, especially when he remembered the feeling of his stomach about to burst when he woke up yesterday, and the haphazard manner he stuffed himself, holding him up to the horrible picture of a 3-month pregnant woman. If it had been any later, his stomach would have burst. Yet, this evil spirit was counted as a good character. "What can we do? Master Qi, I'm the only child in my family for 3 generations. You can't see me dying and not save me." In panic, Yang Hongsheng forgot his place and grasped Qi Shuyan's wrist directly. It wasn't until Qi Shuyan stared at him pulling her wrist that Yang Hongsheng reluctantly let go of her hand. "That's easy, don't use any protective talismans on you for now. Qi Shuyan pondered for a moment and directly said, once it comes, we'll settle it once and for all. Su Yeren also cheerfully echoed, exactly, second brother, in that case, you might as well give me your talisman first. Yang Hongxing hurriedly protected his talisman with both hands, akin to a virtuous woman decisively rejecting the advances of a lecher. You wish. Turning expectantly to Qi Shuyan, he asked, Master, is there another way without risk? Qi Shuyan shook her head apathetically. No. Yang Hongxing's face immediately collapsed. He was dispirited and gut-wrenchingly remorseful. Chapter 20. Profiteer Potential. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yang Hongxing couldn't be any more regretful now. Why hadn't they thought straight before deciding to go to the graveyard to meet a female ghost for excitement? Had they known that this kind of thrill-seeking adventure was asking trouble for themselves, they would have balked going. Yang Hongxing and Su Yeren were both thrill-seekers. Their families owned large enterprises and they hung out together. They used to go bungee jumping, rock climbing, etc., but they got bored of all that, so Yang Hongxing found a novel adventure posted on a web forum online. It was said that there was a cemetery in a remote, deserted town where a female ghost was often heard singing in the middle of the night. In addition, hearsay from passers-by said that the ghost was gorgeous. When Yang Hongxing suggested it, a few of his buddies clapped their hands in approval. So, the few friends curiously went to the cemetery in the middle of the night to meet up with the female ghost. It wasn't just about whether they were lucky or unlucky, female ghosts saw them and fulfilled their wish. After returning, the eldest of the three, Zhou Kengsheng, and the second, Yang Hongxing, were possessed by female ghosts. As the saying went, it was easier to invite the devil than to send it away. The same was true for ghosts. A female ghost haunted the eldest, Zhou Kengsheng. Not only would he spout strange things from time to time, but he would also pencil his brows and put on makeup in front of the mirror, then hideously laugh and cry like crazy and even babble and sing songs. That spectacle was extremely creepy. The second eldest, Yang Hongxing, who would have seizures now and again, was a bit more normal than the eldest, but he wasn't normal at all. He kept shouting that he was hungry and devoured table after table of food like a starving ghost until his belly almost burst. Whenever someone stopped him, he would show a murderous face. The third one, Su Yeren, was lucky, and suffered nothing serious. And the fourth one, Dong Junming, was spared from the suffering because he missed their date due to an earlier appointment. Yang Hongxing and the others had hired a number of masters these days. Unfortunately, a lot of them were counterfeits and they wasted money for nothing. The last time Su Yeren impulsively bought talismans from Qi Shuyan was blind luck. He used several of them and they seemed effective. One sickness ward talisman was used on Yang Hongxing. Ha, no kidding, it worked. The hungry ghost fled after baring her teeth. But the effect on Zhou Kengsheng wasn't obvious. The ghost possessed Zhou Kengsheng's body in a tight grip, but it still played a part. Zhou Kengsheng was able to stay awake at least for a while, but his consciousness just seemed caught up in a battle between human and ghost. After Yang Hongxing explained the situation to Qi Shuyan, she pursed her lips and smiled very unkindly. Both of you, young masters, seem so charming that you've even attracted female ghosts. So do you want to have a human-ghost relationship? Yang Hongxing knew that Qi Shuyan was poking fun at them and smiled bitterly. Master Qi, we are about to be scared to death by those female ghosts, how can we have such amorous thoughts? Because their excursion was his idea, the Zhou family abhorred him with passion. Even after he sent some useful talismans to the Zhou residents, those Zhou family elders still criticized and accused him of being unsightly. Alright, don't stand in the doorway for now, would you like to have a seat in my house? Seeing them blocking the doorway and attracting passers-by's attention frequently, Qi Shuyan found it an inconvenient place to talk. Master Qi, why could that sickness ward talisman drive away the hungry ghost that possessed me, but not the female ghost on my brother? Yang Hongsheng was puzzled. Qi Shuyen had a grasp of the situation, so after a moment's thought, she said, ghost attainment and seniority vary. They could be powerful or not so powerful, and the hungry ghost that possessed you probably hadn't gained much attainment. By the way, do you know how old the ghost that possessed your brother is? Oh, it's like a 1000-year-old female ghost according to the exorcist master who came before, Sui Ran replied. 1,000 years old. That was going to be a problem. Qi Shuyen dropped her eyes slightly. If it were in her previous life, she could have dealt with as many of these 1000-year-old female ghosts as she wanted. But her current power had only recovered to the third layer, so dealing with it could be strenuous. Yang Hongsheng and Su Yeren looked at Qi Shuyen's appearance and felt their hearts pounding. It seemed that a 1000-year-old female ghost wasn't to be trifled with. They exchanged glances with worry in their eyes, apparently afraid that Qi Shuyen would abandon the burden and quit. Master Qi, you must save Big Brother, or else he will be in danger. Yang Hongsheng couldn't care less about his face, humbling himself subserviently and begging. He was worried and anxious that if anything happened to his big brother, the Zhou family might wage a vendetta against his Yang family. Right, I've seen that this talisman was quite useful. Couldn't we use a few more of them? Maybe that female ghost won't be able to stand it. Su Yeren also echoed. He had seen when that talisman was slapped onto Zhou Kongsheng before, that female ghost didn't take it well at all, as if she was burning in a raging inferno. Qi Shuyen chuckled. These are just protective talismans and sickness ward talisman, not talismans to repel ghosts. It's useless against more powerful evil spirits. Master Qi, then don't you have any other ways to exorcise ghosts? Yang Hongsheng sedulously asked with expectant eyes. I forgot to ask, how many days has your big brother been possessed by the female ghost? Qi Shuyen peeled a large white rabbit candy and put it in her mouth. 5 days. Oh, so that's how it is. Qi Shuyen was slightly relieved and secretly said that if that female ghost was indeed 1,000 years old, that guy would have kicked the bucket a long time ago. It seemed that the exorcism master was a fraud and didn't live up to his name. Seeing the two men's eyes cast on the large pile of white rabbit candy in front of her, Qi Shuyen quickly moved it over and warmly offered, would you like one? Yang Hongsheng immediately waved his hand. Only children are fond of eating such treats. Su Yeren also politely shook his head. This Master Qi is really unique. Qi Shuyen sized the two up, blinked her eyes and asked, if you want me to exorcise a ghost, you'll have to pay me. After all, it's a life-threatening business. A single negligence could cost my little life. High risk equals high return, don't you think? Yang Hongsheng immediately understood. How about 10 million? Qi Shuyen stretched out 2 fingers, her eyes flashing with a gleam. She had already become a pauper because of buying elixirs. But if she wanted to quickly regain her previous strength, the only fastest way to do so was to take medicinal baths. But there are 2 of you, so this is a good deal. Yang Hongsheng bit his teeth. Okay, 20 million. This girl truly couldn't be judged by her looks. It seemed that she also had the potential of a profiteer. Qi Shuyen was secretly pleased with herself. As expected, rich people were easy to slaughter, but her fair face remained unchanged. Deal, pay $1 million deposit up front, and once the rest of the matter has been dealt with, pay me the balance then. Yang Hongsheng was also quick and immediately transferred 1 million to Qi Shuyen's card. Soon, Yang Hongsheng's phone rang, and when he answered the phone, his face changed dramatically. Su Yeren had a bad hunch at his reaction and hurriedly asked, what's wrong? Did something happen at Big Brother's place again? Big Brother hung himself. Yang Hongsheng's face stiffened. Su Yeren. Oh dear, Big Brother was back with his death tricks. Last time, it was still jumping from a building and slitting his wrists. That seems like a pretty ugly way to die. Why didn't he choose sleeping pills? Qi Shuyen commented, so, is he dead? Yang Hongsheng shook his head and said urgently, death is not death. Another sickness ward talisman has been used to suppress the female ghost for the time being. But Master Qi, look, we must hurry over there now. It would be terrible if we're late. Qi Shuyen stretched her waist lazily and nodded. Okay. If they didn't leave now, her 10 million would fly away.